What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So interesting stuff here with Eurogamer now backing that article from the Wall Street Journal that had a report on multiple Switch revisions that are expected to be announced and then launched this year, including a Mini and a Pro. And they had some odd information that we're going to go over because it's going to be an interesting situation if these things are announced, as it seems like several places are reporting that they will be. You might want to take a look at what this Mini could end up being. Also, patents from Sony for the PS5 that could show a bit of a shift in their ecosystem. And then Xbox had their entire Indies presentation that we'll also go over here at the end. As always, guys, enjoy these videos. Make sure to like button. It does help out. If you're brand new here, you might as well subscribe because we do this every single weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to start today with a bit of odd news. I'm not really sure why this is a thing or why this happened. So Final Fantasy X 10-2 has been out on the PC for over 2 years now. It's been a while. And all of a sudden, Square decided to add always online DRM to a fully single-player game on PC. Specifically, people noticed it on Steam and took to the message boards, and even now, reviews letting everyone know that, hey, this game apparently has to check in now to the online servers to make sure it's legitimate. No one's really sure why, because the last update that took place that I've seen that everyone else has pointed out was patched earlier this month, first week of March, and that's like the only patch it's ever had, and they decided to add that in under the guise of saying, hey, bug fixes. Always online DRM. I don't know why. It's not like the game hasn't been cracked forever and who knows, but they did it. So I guess keep an eye on Square because you never know. That 3 or 4 year old game could all of a sudden need to have to check in online. We also found out about games with gold for next month in April, as you're seeing a slide here of it. And you're going to see from left to right, the Technomancer will actually be available April 1st to the 30th. You have Outcast April 16th to the May 15th. That's actually a pretty long window there. Battlefront 2, we're going to come back to that one in a second here. Ghost Recon 2, April 16th to the 30th. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is an outstanding game, and I think probably still the best Battlefront game. I know a lot of people like the more current ones, but that's the one that I really enjoyed playing. April 1st to 15th. You'll be able to download that. Xbox Live Gold, and I haven't really tried out the Necromancer. Maybe I'll download that one, or the Techromancer. Maybe I'll download that one, but definitely Battlefront 2. I do like the inclusion of original Xbox 360 games and Xbox One games kind of all thrown into games with Gold and Game Pass. That is a pretty large advantage for Microsoft with their stuff being backwards compatible. And hey, maybe next generation, if Sony has the PS5 fully backwards compatible like we hope, maybe we'll see PlayStation 2 games or PS3 games kind of do what we're seeing here and start to pop up in their PlayStation Plus games. We also got a release date for Steam World Quest. Image Forum Games put out a tweet, as you're seeing here, that does point to an April 25th release date. It's going to be showing up first on Nintendo Switch, and it seems to be going to PC later on at some point, but at least, as they say, for the foreseeable future, it's going to be on the Switch starting April 25th. This was actually a pretty cool looking game that we saw before in a previous Direct, where it's kind of like this RPG style card game. It's something they wanted to tackle, the SteamWorld team, that's a bit different than they've done before, and I'm actually really looking forward to this. I want to try it out and play it, and it looks like it'd be kind of fun. We've seen other games before that have to deal with card games, and it is showing up in April, which is kind of stacking right now. Like, a lot of stuff is showing up in April on other platforms, but definitely on the Switch as well. So this is going to be a pretty packed month, and now we're adding another game to it. Also, real quick, check this out. .emu actually put out a trailer that shows gameplay for the first time that we've seen for Streets of Rage 4, and I've been curious how this game was going to look. Well, you're seeing it here, and it looks, I think, pretty good. There's not a ton, I think, that they can do with kind of the look of Streets of Rage, but it looks really nice there on screen. It has this kind of like this 3D effect almost. I think it's from the shadowing and everything, and visually it looks good. The artwork and everything looks good. It looks smooth, frame rate wise and everything, and I'm looking forward to this game. I wasn't sure at first because I didn't know what they would try to do with it, if it would turn into like Turtles in Time Reshelled or whatever, where that was really bad. This looks a bit more true to form for like an arcade game, so I'm looking forward to it. Need more information. This is just the first time we've actually seen gameplay. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're going to start right away with Eurogamer and these Switch revisions. Now, we previously talked about in a video talking about the Wall Street Journal and their report for these Switch revisions, where they said there would be a Pro model and there would be a cheaper mini style model, one that's based on the low end to pretty much replace the 3DS. Now, Eurogamer seems to be completely backing these claims, saying that yes, there'll be a Pro model and there will be a cheaper alternative that seems to be more kid-friendly, as they're saying. It seems to be more or less targeting the 2DS audience, the audience that wants a system as cheap as possible, even if it means cutting out a bunch of features. And they are saying that there could be some serious features cut out here, not just vibration or rumble features like they talked about with the Wall Street Journal. Get this. According to Eurogamer, they might actually remove the functionality to dock and essentially switch, and go to the TV and everything. And that's something that surprises me a bit. I thought if they were going to do it, they would have just removed the dock and sold you just the little handheld system and, you can still pop it in. But there are some things to consider here with this system. If they make it smaller, it might not fit in the dock anyway. Otherwise they have to release another dock. You want to buy a whole other dock or a cable or something. That's something to think about there. What if they go with a whole clamshell design like we've seen with the 3DS so it can close and be a bit more, kid-friendly? There's a lot of stuff to think about here, but Eurogamer is at least backing what your Wall Street Journal is saying, that, yeah, we could be seeing some revisions this year. Would that really surprise people, though? With Nintendo's history with the 3DS and the DS and the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy, and pretty much every system that is portable, they generally do revision after revision after revision for. It's not new for Nintendo. The Pro model is very interesting as well. Now, according to Eurogamer, it would still retain its docking functionality, which, yeah, I would hope so, because the whole point of the Pro, we would assume, is to provide a better visual experience, maybe even on your TV, but definitely as a handheld. So here we are now looking at possibly 2 revisions. Now, they are saying that the jump would be more like a 3DS to a new 3DS. And yeah, it makes sense. Here's the thing. I don't think the Pro model is going to light the world on fire or anything. I think it's going to be a jump that will allow things like Doom, for example, rather than running at 540p or something, run more consistent at 720p with better frame rates and everything. That's kind of what I'm thinking, because a lot of these games that we've seen have dynamic resolution, so they will shift at times based on what's going on screen. So if the system is more powerful, it'll stay at that top end more. It's something we've seen with the Xbox One X and something like Halo 5, for example, where when the X came out, they didn't need to really have a patch. It would just run at basically the roof of 1080p at the time, and it would run fine that way. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about with the Pro. The Mini is the interesting one. Keep an eye on that, because we don't know about the form factor. We think it could look like a Vita. It could also look like a 3DS, right? It could have like that clamshell design if it's designed for kids. And then you got to start thinking about the price, because if they're removing things like the ability to dock, the rumble motors, right? The HD rumble, if you will. How cheap is this thing going to be? Because if they're targeting the 2DS audience, well, the 2DS XL is $150. Is this new Switch Mini going to be $150? That would actually be a great price point. And that's kind of what I want them to target for that, because it's going to be a system that's going to be designed to sell a ton of units at the cheapest price possible. And that will really help them going into the fiscal year after this one. For example, when they're going to be looking to sell more than the previous year, a cheaper system will do it. So we'll look forward to hearing more about this. I mean, we assume they're going to have to start talking about it soonish, right? Like E3 maybe, they'll at least announce one or both of them even with release dates. So look forward to that. But keep in mind also, they're no stranger to announcing something and then releasing it the following month. They could announce it in like August and release it in September for all we know, but we'll see going forward here. Next up, let's talk about EA, because they have laid off 350 people. This was actually found by Kotaku. They have the story as you're seeing a shot of their article here. And yes, they talk about how 350 people were laid off from Electronic Arts, and it's in the marketing, publishing, and other areas. And EA did also put out a letter, and Andrew Wilson also put out some information as well, where they have the vision to be the world's greatest games company, and going on to say, if we're honest with ourselves, we're not there right now. We have work to do with our games, our player relationships, and our business. And unfortunately, as and I'm sure several other people have talked about, if these game companies don't do well, it's not necessarily the people at the top that suffer, it's the people in the trenches, essentially. The people who are working at the desks and everything and not getting paid millions of dollars that generally suffer. They laid off 350 people, and while they said they're trying to work to get them possibly jobs internally at other departments or just other places in general, other companies, it's still not fun for someone to lose their job. So it's a shame to see that, but EA really, I mean, they really need to look inward here because it's pretty obvious what's going on here with their games, and it's just they're falling right now, right? They're so enamored with this games as a service stuff that I feel like they're losing touch with the gaming world in general. And I get it; it's pretty cool to see those big numbers of microtransactions and stuff, but we've all talked about it. There's a roof. Eventually, you're just going to run out of people to sell to or to subscribe, you know? And then what do you do? Well, that's something EA's learning. So hopefully they do look inward. Hopefully they figure out that they just create good games that don't necessarily need to last, years at a time, that they'll still sell well and they'll have I think, a more attainable benchmark. I'm also wondering if these layoffs are in anticipation of performance from Anthem, because I don't know if Anthem did as well as they wanted. Remember, they wanted like 6 million copies in its first few months or something, and I don't know if they got there, but we'll find out in their conference call that they'll have to have with investors, I believe next month, right? Right around the time we'll hear about Nintendo's, I believe at the end of April, we'll start to hear about EA stuff as well. But keep an eye on Anthem, because these layoffs might make more sense when we find out about how their fiscal earnings went. Next up, let's talk about some interesting patents that were found from Sony. Now, these appear to be patents that were filed in 2015, for example, and they've become public now. Sometimes companies will do patents and just never do anything with them, but at times they'll also give us a look to see what are they thinking right now? And it seems like Sony is thinking about next generation a lot right now. We've seen those backwards compatibility patents pop up and everything. And here we are now with 2 other patents that seem to have some possibilities for next generation, I'll say that. One, for example, as you're seeing here, talks about the ability to trade in-game digital items. They had a diagram and everything that kind of showed modifying your ship in one game and then trading it to the other. Now, trading digital goods or items in games isn't necessarily new. I believe people have been able to do it on things like Steam before, but this would be different, I think, if it was Sony's their first-party stuff, possibly being able to do it. Maybe they have ideas around being able to trade different items in your games, or with their first-party stuff. Maybe it's for third-party stuff, It's hard to say there, but they're at least exploring more network functionality. And then, kind of on top of that, there was this patent here that describes the ability for cloud gaming device handover. So this still points to doing stuff with their cloud. Now, this was filed in 2016, in April actually, so a couple years ago. And it talks a bit about being able to do cross-progression between cloud devices. So we've kind of seen this with Google, right? We just saw Stadia. They're sitting there moving between systems with the phones and tablets and all this stuff. So here's the thing about, I think, with PlayStation, they do see a streaming service, even with cloud in general, whether that's just moving games between devices, whether it's PlayStations even, or who knows, maybe they like a phone too, right? But it could also be moving your saves easier than, I guess, the PlayStation Plus stuff. But the idea of being able to use their cloud-based stuff, move things around, I mean, I do think Sony is still looking in the cloud and game streaming heavily. But seeing stuff being used with handover through cloud and devices would be kind of interesting going into next gen, mostly because we are going towards the war of the streaming services. And Sony's been doing it for a while. They just don't really talk about them doing it. In fact, I think they have more games than Game Pass by quite a bit on their PlayStation Now service. And honestly, their PlayStation Now stuff is actually not that bad anymore. And you can download a lot of the games. So technically, Sony, I think, has the bigger streaming service now out of Microsoft and them. It's just no one really talks about it. Our last bit of news, let's quickly go over the Xbox Indies presentation. Now, of course, we know Xbox is going to do an indie presentation similar to Nintendo. We just saw the PlayStation Direct even, and this was a pre-recorded video that shed light on a bunch of indie games, which I think is really, really good, because indie developers have to they have to claw their way up to any marketing they can get, right? To just show you what their game's about. So I like this. I wish all 3 of them would do stuff around indie games. So hey, maybe Sony will do one as well. But Microsoft did this presentation, and they had quite a bit to show, actually. I think they had 8 games that were really big that they put up there. A lot of them go into Game Pass as well, day one. Well, that's cool to see indie games pop up there. But some of the bigger ones that we've talked about there was Killer Queen Black, Outer Wilds, and we also saw Blazing Chrome, which looks kind of like a Contra-style game, which is kind of neat. The After Party and Void Bastards are probably the 2 big ones. Void actually has kind of this this cel-shaded 13 look, 13 being an older Xbox PS2 game back in the day, or on the GameCube even. I like the look of that. I want to see a bit more about that one. After Party looked kind of neat as well. After Party was extremely creative, I would say. Like, overall, when I saw it, it's about out-drinking the devil, which was kind of funny. Supermarket Shriek, The Good Life, and then Operencia, The Stolen Son. So, several different indie games there. Pretty cool to see. The presentation did center on the different games more so than something like an indies, but it's just more spotlight for indies games. And, you know, it's tough to get in the spotlight if you're an indie developer. But I'll be keeping an eye on Void Bastards for sure, and then After Party. Those were the two big ones that I took away from there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure you hit the like button. It really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is the Switch revisions, the Mini, the Pro. Do you think they're happening? Which one would you want to buy, if any of them? And what do you think they would even turn out to be? Especially that Mini. The Pro, I think most people are like, okay, maybe it's an incremental upgrade. I mean, it's a big upgrade. But the Mini, we don't even know what it might look like. If it's not even going to dock, that means it could look like anything. But let me know what you guys think about that one down below. Very interested. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.